All right, well, welcome to Mesa City Council Chambers at 7 o'clock. This is the July 19th, 2011 regular meeting of the Mason City Council. Just want to remind everybody at home that you can find the packets that everyone up here has at masoncity.net. You can go to the right-hand side up top in your government and go down to Mayor Council and look over and you'll see the agendas and the packets. We'll call the meeting to order. Let the record reflect that all council members are present. Is there a motion a second to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, I'm just to make a quick note here before we move to the public forum. There's a public hearing on the urban revitalization plan. That's the tax abatement plan for increment on $75,000 of improvement. We will have our director of growth development planning, Pam Myra, make a presentation right before that, and then there will be the public hearing. So folks who are here to comment on that plan, hold off while we're in the public forum. When we get to the public hearing, then you'll have that opportunity to comment after the presentation of the director. So now is the time for public forum. Anybody who would like to come up and address one of the agenda items, with the exception of the public hearing, please feel free to come to the podium. You'll have 5 minutes to address and just mention the item that you are going to talk about. All right. Seeing none, we will move to the consent agenda, and I'll read that first here. Number 1, minutes. 2, claims. 3, permits. 4, administrator recommending approval report of outstanding obligations, disclosure statement. 5, administrator recommending approval authorization to submit a letter of interest to host RAGBRAI as an overnight stop during the 2012 ride. Number 6, administrator recommending approval authorization to move ahead with the TIF consolidation plan and approval to hire the Allers Law Firm to complete the necessary work. Number 7, administrator recommending approval resolution authorizing the purchase of 1 flex swing mower with Parks Department implemented in Mason City, Iowa. Number 8, administrator recommending approval resolution approving the purchase of 16 XPR Privacy Plus 800 turbo radios for the police department from Electrical Engineering of Mason City, Iowa. Number 9, administrator recommending approval resolution approving the purchase of 3 hardened Datalux Tracer in-car computers for the police department from Law Enforcement Technology Group of Plymouth, Minnesota. Number 10, administrator recommending approval resolution of award of contract to Easy Masonry of Mason City, Iowa for the repair to the chimney and shelter 1 in East Park. 11, administrator recommending approval of non-budgeted resolution accepting work and ordering payment for construction of the South Federal Avenue sanitary sewer lateral project. 12, administrator recommending approval resolution award of contract to Mid-Continent Contracting Inc., Mason City, Iowa for the 2011 sidewalk program. Number 13, administrator recommending approval of non-budget resolution award of contract to Mid-Continent Contracting Inc., Mason City, Iowa, and approving contracted bond for the street crack and joint sealing and crack filling project. Number 14, administrator recommending approval resolution award of contract to Dean Snyder Construction of Clear Lake, Iowa for the modifications to the vents and hatches on the water reservoir and the water treatment plant flood wall project. Number 15, administrator recommending approval resolution award of contract to the Snyder Corporation for professional services related to the traffic and street sign GPS project. 16, administrator recommending approval resolution approving final plat for Fairgrounds first subdivision in the city of Mason City. 17, administrator recommending approval 2008 resolution accepting warranty deed for 607 North Hampshire Avenue. 18, administrator recommending approval resolution authorizing approval for 2080 agreement between the City of Mason City, Iowa, Clear Lake, Iowa, and the Airport Commission. The City of Mason City, Iowa for construction of certain improvements to the Mason City, Iowa Municipal Airport. B, resolution authorizing approval of the 2080 agreement between the City of Mason City, Iowa, Clear Lake, Iowa, and the Airport Commission for the City of Mason City, Iowa for maintenance of certain improvements to the Mason City, Iowa Municipal Airport. And 19, administrator recommending approval resolution determining the necessity and fixing date for a public hearing on the matter of the adoption of proposed amendment number 1 to the North Federal Avenue Corridor Downtown Urban Revitalization Plan. Council, are there any of these items that you'd like to pull? Mr. Marsters.
Number 6 and number 14.
Anybody else down here? Mr. Weaver.
Number 12.
Anybody else down here? All right. All right. Chair will entertain a motion on the consent agenda to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 6, 14, and 12. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Clerk call the roll.
Marsters.
Yes.
Hickey.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Tarquist.
Yes.
Solberg.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
All right, thank you, council. Number 6 is Mr. Marsters. The minister recommending approval authorization to move ahead with the TIF consolidation plan and to hire the Allers Law Firm to complete the necessary work. Mr. Marsters, do you have a motion?
I'll pass on making a motion there. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have a motion?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Torquist, Ms. Solberg, Mr. Marsters.
Yeah, I just wanted the public to know I'm going to vote no on this issue. I've been on the council almost 8 years now. TIF consolidation was never mentioned in almost 8 years until immediately following the presentation of the multipurpose center. And obviously the community growth district does not have enough TIF money to fund the community, the multipurpose center. So it's obvious that this whole consolidation is about multi-purpose center and getting enough TIF revenue to fund such a project. I'm disappointed that we aren't open to the public and tell the public the truth. So I'll be voting no to that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Marsters. Who else? Mr. Nelson.
Well, just to follow up on Councilman Marsters, I've been here 11 and a half years, and the same applies. There's been no mention about expanding the TIF district. It all relates, in my opinion, to the proposed multi-purpose center that has been brought forward and presently in study. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Torquist.
Well, that simply isn't true. We've talked about TIF consolidation before we started talking seriously about the multi-purpose facility, and unfortunately, if the litmus test is we haven't talked about it during our 8 and 12-year terms, so we don't need to talk about it now, I guess that would be the true measure of why the community doesn't move forward. The fact is that even if we don't do a multi-purpose facility, TIF consolidation makes sense for the community. We've talked about that. This isn't new news. That's just a gross misrepresentation of the truth.
Thank you, Mr. Torquist. Mr. Charlie has a brief comment.
My comments on that would be that the issue relative to the TIF optimization by consolidating will give us the opportunity to provide. It's not on. It's not on.
I don't think you guys are here.
No. Is that better? No.
Mr. Yashevsky, can we get Mr. Trout's microphone up? Or here, I can give him mine.
Okay, relative to the issue of optimization of our TIF district, we're dealing with issues of a declining number of years that are available with the district. When staff talked about it, we realized that the opportunity to fund the multipurpose center doesn't exist with the current TIF money that's available. With the budget implications that we have, at best, it would help us with doing some of the initial things that would be considered for the multi-purpose center. It will not fund the construction. We'll need new growth to help us to be able to do that. So what this really is, it gives us the opportunity to help with economic development projects in the latter years of these districts to be able to pull money from other areas for smaller projects that might come about. So that's one of the biggest advantages. And the other that we're having is that if there are things that we want to talk about doing for the multi-purpose center, it will give us that opportunity, but it will not fund the whole thing.
And I guess I should clarify, Mr. Trout, are you recommending approval of this?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Is my understanding that Clear Lake was pretty forward-looking and did this about 8 years ago. They consolidated all their TIF districts, and I think it's worked out pretty well for them. Anybody else? Mr. Weaver.
Well, it's Mr. Trout.
Yes.
There's some validity, I think, to what the Councilman Marshers and Nelson are saying. I understand that. It is looked at as a sort of revenue for that. But you're telling me that the bigger picture here is also economic development.
Correct.
That would be another tool if we needed to, and if they chose to be in a certain district in the community, we could funnel that money to that project over there.
Right. It's an opportunity to be able to do that.
Right, and so I guess I would tend to agree with Councilman Tornquist. Consolidation has been bantered around several years ago too. I wouldn't say necessarily before, because we did talk about the multi-purpose arena back in the late 90s. So that's probably but it has. I can see where they're at, how they're at. But here's where I'm at. Not knowing what's going to happen, I do not want to avoid. Would this be a true statement? If you had the possibility to fund a multi-purpose arena with TIF, if say that was the case, could we avoid a vote?
There is a measure that allows us to be able to avoid a vote for funding it with TIF, but there's a recall provision that if there's a petition filed that then allows it and would require a vote.
Right, because I think that the reason I'll support this is there's plenty of people on both sides of the fence that don't want it and do want it, and I would have nothing to do with trying to go around that election. I think even Councilman Tornquist is on the record. It'll be an important issue you have over the election of asking your candidates to support an election, a vote for that issue. That's what I don't want to avoid, and I think that's what Councilman Marshers and Nelson do not want to avoid. And I'm with them too. I would certainly call for an election of that because there is such a wide in support on both sides.
Well, one comment I'll make quick is that if we move forward and we continue to make these steps and we have this funding available and our staff members present their information and then you move into the idea of you want to do a feasibility study, if it's within this district and it meets the guidelines that are there, then we could look at funding a feasibility study with this and in that way. Something that's going to impact the whole county would be paid for by the county, paid for by the school, paid for by the city with that TIF money. So, I mean, we'd have to check the legalities as to whether it can be used, but I think that's the type of thing that it gives us the opportunity to be able to.
So essentially, we could have Walmart pay for that feasibility study without going to the taxpayers directly.
We can have the other increment pay for that. Yes.
One question for you, just as somebody who's been on the job a while and in several different communities, do you support a vote for the multi-purpose arena?
I don't think that's not where we're at in this conversation.
Well, no, I'm asking.
Well, I think I
it's
support the process that's allowed for consideration of a vote, that there should be an ability to have a petition. I think that's a good measure that's included within the law to allow people to be able to sign a petition and say, let's have a vote. So if
that's the petition format, but so you're not making the statement that you support a.
I think that whatever the law allows is what should be followed, and I think that that's where we're at. Obviously, if there's a general obligation bond, then it should be, obviously it will be voted on.
And I must say this, Mayor, I think that the people of Mason City pay Mr. Trout $144,000 a year. They look to him as some sort of leadership, and I don't think censoring him is a good idea.
That was the last. I was just trying to keep the discussion based on the TIF subject. So, anybody else? Mr. Yankee.
I guess I'm looking at this a little different. I like the comments that you made, Mr. Weaver, and I agree with them. I'm looking at this from an economic development standpoint. This is going to put us in a more advantageous position if a factory or a company wants to come here and create some jobs in a certain district. This would help us to promote that and possibly give them some incentives in the long term. And I think even Mr. Willett, or Brent, our new EDC guy, I think he's in favor of it. I can see the advantages of this for the long run. So, am I wrong in saying that? I don't think so.
I think he supports it, yes. Yeah. Discussions we've had, he's offered his assistance in order to pursue it.
So, I'll be supporting those too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey. Anybody else? Ms. Solberg?
Well, I find this rather interesting because for a year and a half now being on council, TIF has been brought up numerous times, I think almost since the second city council meeting. We've had numerous workshops on it and reactions by prior council people up there with many years of experience. They were enlightened by what TIF was. So it's been brought up at least a year and a half ago, so this isn't anything new. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Solberg. Anybody else? All right. We've got a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, clerk call the roll.
Tornquist,
Yes.
Solberg,
Yes?
Nelson,
Yes.
Hickey,
Yes.
Marsters,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes. All right, well, that was unanimous. Thank you, council. Number 12, Administrator recommending approval resolution award to contract to Mid-Continent Contracting Inc. of Mesa City, Iowa for the 2011 sidewalk program. Mr. Weaver, do you have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Weaver?
I'd like to ask staff a question, either Mr. Trout or Mr. Reno. I got a person last week that stopped me, and then I have a phone call this afternoon, kind of ironically. I know it's probably too late for this, but I noticed they can come in and get this job done in pretty good time, pretty good fashion. The call I got was about city-owned property at West Park and Parker's Woods. And I went out there, and there's about 20 to 30 cakes of sidewalk that are gravel gone, totally gone. And, as we enforce people, and in this right here, some people are going to go ahead and hire their own contractor to get it done, and then others aren't, and we're going to assess it to the property. Well, it's just one of those things where when we send that kind of message, we ought to take care of our own too. So is there any chance we could get Parker's Woods done this year? That's where the shelter house is over there on North Jackson.
We do, yes. Every year we do some city portion. We do some alley approaches. We do alley approach sidewalks. We do, this year, Mr. Sangler did put some extra money in the budget to do some of those areas. And we are going to do West Park. We're doing that whole stretch along Jackson.
Will that be done this year?
Yes.
Great.
That is already part of this project.
Great.
We are pushed out quite a ways to our maximum level, basically, of spending, but there is a lot of city work on it this year. And if the property owners come in and hire their own contractors and pay their own bills and things like that, that leaves us money to spend on more, and we utilize that whole, whole budget.
So we're looking at doing then
Yes.
out there at Parker's Woods.
Yes, there's just a little bit over by East Park we're doing, just some scattered stuff like that. But
Great, that'll be good news. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weaver. Anybody else on this matter? All right, well, seeing none, we've got a motion and a second. Clerk call roll.
Weaver,
Yes.
Tornquist,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Solberg,
Yes?
Marsters,
Yes.
Hickey.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Number 14, Administrator recommending approval of resolution award to contractor Dean Snyder Construction of Clear Lake, Iowa for the modifications to the vents and hatches on the water reservoir and the water treatment plant flood wall project. Mr. Marshall, do you have a motion?
Yeah, move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Marshall?
Yeah, I see Mark standing by the podium. I just would like some clarification because this talks about the water treatment flood wall project, and I believe this has absolutely nothing to do with the flood wall. Isn't it across the street, the
Yes.
hatches?
yes, this is across the street, but obviously it has an impact there was an impact with the 2008 flood. And the grant that we received from FEMA and the state, we do have, the flood wall is done now. I mean, that project is for the most part complete. We do have some extra funding there. So early on, I mean, this is way last fall, we already started talking to Homeland Security and FEMA, talking to them about expanding the project and making preparations and modifications to that reservoir to protect that as well.
Right, so it's nothing to do with the flood wall. It's across the street, those hatches.
Yeah, it's the hatches, but it's all part of the same grant. There's
Okay,
using that money.
I understand. That's what I needed clarification. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, it's down here. All right, seeing none, we've got a motion and a second. Clerk call roll.
Marsters,
Yes.
Tornquist,
Yes.
Solberg,
Yes?
Weaver,
Yes.
Hickey,
Yes.
Nelson.
All right, thank you, council. Number 20 is going to be a public hearing, and we're going to hear from Director Meyer. The subject is adoption of the Mesa City 2011 Residential Urban Revitalization Plan. And see if we get fired up here. I'll introduce Director Pam Murray.
Good evening. City Council directed staff to prepare an urban revitalization plan. We held an initial set for public hearing in June, and tonight is the first public hearing for this, and I do have a PowerPoint presentation to explain this. We've had numerous phone calls and people stopping by City Hall to ask questions. Of this project, so a lot of interest by the public in terms of this as an incentive to build new houses, expand on existing houses in the community.
Bear with us, folks. We're shuffling remotes just like you guys do at home.
Is there anybody here under 14 that can figure this out?
There it is.
That's what we needed. All right. Go ahead, Director.
Thank you. Okay, this is called the Mesa City 2011 Residential Urban Revitalization Plan. Okay. Now this one doesn't work. There we go. Okay. So I jumped to the bottom bullet there. It says over 13,000 postcards were mailed, and so the big question is, why did I get a postcard? If you live in or own property in this area that's being considered for a tax abatement program, you received a notification by postcard. This was required by law, and we had to notify every owner of record and every occupant about the plan. And amazingly, only 13 postcards were returned in the mail, so we hit almost everybody. What is urban revitalization? State law allows the city to create urban revitalization areas to spur new investment and revitalize older areas of the community. The incentive is an abatement or an exemption of your new property taxes on improvements for a specific period of time. Why is the city doing this? One of the City Council's 2011 goals is to encourage new residential development in the community. This program offers a financial incentive to improve existing housing and build new housing. New versus old. If you are building a new house or improving a house that is not historic or what we might call blighted, there is a $75,000 cap on the amount of new assessed value that can be exempted. This is a state requirement. The example I give is that if you built a new house assessed at $250,000, only the first $75,000 of that value would be exempted. You would pay taxes on $175,000. You would, however, reap a savings of about $1,200 a year for 5 years. If you are adding on to or improving an historic house, and that would be any house that we verify is older than 50 years old, or a blighted house, and by that we would say one that clearly needs some sort of improvement, code deficiency problems, or just older house definitely needing repair. There's no cap on the new value, and it all can be exempted. So no new property taxes applied for a 5-year period, and we don't care if you add $500,000 to a historic house or a blighted house. If you put that much money in, it's all abated. What properties are eligible? All property assessed as residential, which generally are 1- and 2-unit residences, a single-family home or a twin home, duplex, but also all property assessed as commercial as long as it consists of 3 or more residential units comprising of at least 75% of the building space. So apartment buildings, obviously. In the downtown situation, you'd almost have to be a 4-story building with the first floor being commercial and the upper 3 stories being residential to meet that 75% of the building space. But most multifamily properties will be eligible. The plan area includes all of our Z2, Z3, and Z5 zoning districts. And here's a map. You see it basically covers the entire city except for what's our commercial core, or our commercial highway zones, our industrial areas, and any areas zoned agricultural. So most of our residential districts, including the downtown, are included in the plan area. Whoops. No, okay. Moving a flood buyout house. This, as we were working through this plan, this became a highlight for me. You know, my department is working on the flood buyout project, and we hope to save, 25 or more wonderful houses that instead of being torn down and sent to the landfill, we hope we can find a buyer and move those houses. In talking to the city assessor, we have agreed that if you buy a house, a flood buyout house, when they're available, and it probably won't be till next spring, the full assessed value of the house in its new location, if that location is in the plan area, would be eligible for 100% 5-year abatement. And we hope that's enough of an incentive to help save these houses. Any minimum requirements? Yes, there are. 1 or 2 family residences must increase the overall assessed value by at least 10%. Good news, bad news is that adding siding, windows, roof will not likely increase your assessed value. That's considered routine maintenance. So the good news is that the assessor doesn't typically increase your taxes just because you're maintaining your house. It's really adding a new garage, adding a new addition, kind of substantially increasing the footprint of your property that you actually get an increase in the overall assessed value. And then a 3+ unit building must increase the value by at least 15%. And all city building permits and codes will apply. What happens next? After this public hearing, there is a 30-day comment period, so anyone having questions, concerns, or objections can file that in writing with my office. There will be a second public hearing September 6th, required by law. And then if, in fact, the council approves this project, every February 1st of each year thereafter, and the plan is good for a 10-year period, applications would be accepted for work completed. So how do I apply? Applications will be available on the city's webpage, but also in the Growth Development and Planning Department, which is located on the 3rd floor of City Hall. You only need to apply once, not every year, to get all 5 years. And if you actually forget to apply, you can still apply the next year and get all 5 years of abatement. So typically we'll look at, at the end of the year, if you have a completed project, and I want you in January to file an application. We bring those applications to the City Council by February 1. They certify things, then they go to the City Assessor by March 1st. Any questions of anyone?
I think we'll do one quick round of questions here with council, and then have the public hearing. So, Ms. Solberg.
I have a question on the blighted houses. You said that up to 100% of that, I think, would qualify. Do you have to leave a common wall, or what happens if there's a house that's been maybe condemned and somebody tears it down and puts up a $150,000 house? Do you have any qualifications on that?
That probably is a new house.
So, okay.
If it's new construction, if it's a brand new.
Did you have a common wall to keep that?
We have to deal with the city assessor on that, I think, to figure that out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Solberg. Anyone else? Mr. Hickey?
On the historical houses that have to be 50 years or older, does there have to be any historical significance to them houses, or they just have to be 50 years or older to receive that?
Well,
because there's a lot of houses in Mesa City that are over 50 years but don't have historical significance.
then they may unless they're in pristine condition, they might fall into the blighted category. But the intent of the historic is that you're actually doing something to maintain and preserve the historic character of the house. So really the intent of state law is that you're preserving historic character and improving an historic property. Otherwise, if it's just an old house, it really does fall into the blight category, and it's an old house that needs help.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey. Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, a question, ma'am. You know, property taxes are a main source of income for our city. Any projections, estimates about how this plan would affect our city income negatively? Because if it does, it affects city services. Any projections, estimates, your opinion?
You know, over the past number of years, I've been here 4 years, and there have been very limited applications for this program. Of course, it's in a very small area. The existing urban revitalization district is in a very small downtown and North Federal Corridor Avenue project area. So there just haven't been a lot of projects. So given that all of a sudden we've expanded it to a majority of the community, I would hope that there will be more interest, but I have not even tried to estimate, you know, how many projects we would see come through the doors that would apply for this. The only thing I can say is, and this is always the argument that we use even about giving TIF incentives, is if we didn't give it, it might not have happened anyway. And yes, we're going to abate it for 5 years, but then it eventually comes on the tax roll. So it's something we don't have now. We're taking a little bit of a gamble that it's, and giving an incentive that it'll happen, but then eventually they come on the tax roll, and someone might not have built the house or added onto the property without the incentive. So that's how we look at it generally.
And the other thing that I'd like to add is that because of the program being established the way it is, that only the $75,000 worth of value, a lot of the more, you know, in a more expensive home, it's really, I think, an incentive to those individuals to consider building a little bit early. That's what we hope. Hope that it's I think that it will provide opportunity for building to occur at a sooner pace than it might otherwise. And you're still capturing a certain amount of those dollars. You're not forgiving all of it on the new homes especially. So I think that helps balance that concern in my mind.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Anyone else? Mr. Tornquist.
I have a question on section 9.03. One of the things that I appreciated being clarified in this policy here was item number 3. As I was reading through it, I was wondering about timing. And for people that happen to be doing a project right now or did one last year that would meet the guidelines, my concern is we might have been inundated with applications for work that was either started or even completed before we put this in place. But the policy does say that improvements were made during the time period the area was so designated. And so since we have not designated it a revitalization area, that would imply, if not clearly state, that it's for projects that begin or finish after we actually put this policy in place.
We're going to say finish.
Okay.
So projects that are being worked on and completed by the end of the year, you know, and ready to apply in January 1, we will accept.
I think that's cool. And then a question that I would have, 9.03 talks about city council approval of the application. Would you see that approval of the application after a project has been completed, or before a project's been completed, or any time in between?
No, projects are completed. They make an application in January. Between February 1 and March 1, I get on a council agenda and share with you all those applications. We'll have done our analysis to make sure that they meet the criteria, and then we make a recommendation to approve, and you guys sort of certify them and send them off to the city assessor.
So is there any mechanism, when we do post-approval, there may be some people that are looking for some reassurances before they spend money that the project's actually going to qualify and be abated. Is there a process by which they might be able to get some kind of pre-approval or some kind of assurances that if they move forward, it has every appearance of being a viable project.
I always have them talk to the city assessor, and he will tell them based on the work that they're going to do, the costs involved. He can make a pretty good estimate of whether or not, let's say it's going to meet the 10% requirement of increasing the assessed value, and if the work, you know, and which category, let's say, they're going to fall into, whether it's the new construction or the historic or the blight. So I would always, if people call me with those kind of questions, and I often then just, it might be a simple thing I can answer, but I normally refer them to the city assessor.
I see section 9.06, and it may just be the way these are numbered, is the city assessor review of the property after the project's been completed. Would that review take place before the project comes before the council for approval of the actual abatement?
Yeah, I need him to go out there and tell me that the work's been done and that it's good and he's going to value it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's primarily the reason that it has to be a post-assessment. They might say that they're going to do 15% improvement, and we have to wait until they actually complete it to verify.
Thank you, Mr. Turnquist. Anybody else have that? All right. We'll say that. Thank you very much, Director. We're going to open the public hearing here. Everybody will have 5 minutes to make comments on the urban revitalization plan. Please just state your name and address when you come to the podium. Clock's right up in front of you there.
Carolyn Brostad, 734 North Carolina, and I really wanted to ask a question of Pam, and I thought that's what you meant by question and answer. So, if I can do that, all I want to know is this retroactive to 2008 flood for those of us that had to rebuild and built on the floodplain according to city and flood specifications, or, I mean, a lot of people moved out of town, a lot of people moved out of state. My whole neighborhood is going to be gone as far as houses are concerned, except we're there. So I'm, of course, concerned about myself and anybody else who did it.
Scott's question about timeline would be appropriate for your situation. It's only going to be effective for this building season. So things that are now under construction now and completed at the end of 2011 can make application January 2012. And this is state law, unfortunately. They don't allow us to go back prior to when the plan was adopted.
Anybody else?
I got a question.
Please take the podium.
Actually, I'm Dennis Chesney and I live at 211 6th Street Northwest. And I guess I have a little different concept of what this might entail tonight. But the first question is, the city assessor or county assessor doesn't raise your taxes for siding, roofing, windows, and that kind of stuff. It's a physical improvement. And the reason I'm asking the question is because there's a lot of houses that I think could use a little of that kind of improvement with a little bit of incentive from something. And that would be community development, and with or without, you know, the whole realization of what you're dealing with here. There should be some, I'd like to see some incentive for that kind of activity to continue going and actually maybe even begin in some areas. We need it.
Thank you. And now, Brent, do you want to make a quick comment on that?
Right now, this would not cover it. It has to be a major improvement, 10%, so it won't cover.
Okay, go ahead, Director, real quick.
I might add, though, that when I was saying that, you know, someone who has a house and it's in relatively good condition and it's just time to put a new roof on, or they've decided they're going to side it, or they're going to, you know, do the new windows. But there are a lot of derelict properties out there, and those are the blighted ones. So somebody comes in and puts the new roof on, puts the new siding on, puts the new window, does it all, and renovate a building that might have an assessed value of only $40,000 on it, and $40,000, and all of a sudden it's going to be assessed as $100,000, yeah, no, the assessor will raise the taxes, and in fact, then that would be eligible for this abatement. So if it's a major renovation project versus just, let's say, a homeowner who is maintaining their property, so I would say yes, that could be an incentive to our landlords out there to do some major renovations and not have to be taxed.
Great, thank you. What else? All right. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you very much, Director and staff and Mr. Trout. Thank you, Council, for your questions. Thanks to the public for having some interest in this. I think this could be a really good program here in Mason City. Number 21, Administrator recommending approval resolution instituting proceedings to take additional action for the issuance of not to exceed $1,425,000 in general obligation bonds. B, resolution directing the advertisement for sale of 1.4 million GO bonds, Series 2011A, and approving electronic bidding procedures. C, resolution instituting proceedings to take additional action for the issuance of not to exceed 2.99 million general GO bonds for refunding bonds. D, resolution directing the advertisement for sale of $2.96 million in GO refunding bonds, Series 2011B, and approving electronic bidding procedures. Do you want to make any comments on this?
Yes, please.
Before we do public hearing?
What this entails is a number of projects, the radios, work that we're going to do at the airport, 19th Street lighting project that has begun, and also replacement of some street vehicles. The fire truck that was considered approved in the budget is not included in this. That's something that in the past we've looked at where we are with our budget, and we'll consider it later in the spring after we've completed the next budget process. That's where we looked at it last time. The key, though, is that as Kevin went through the information that we had around existing bonds, we were able to identify bonds that could be redeemed early and save us about $62,000 in interest, depending on the final interest price. Interest rates are very good right now for local entities, and so that was something that he identified and is included in this process. So we're excited about that. It'll give us more flexibility in the future as we look at bonding needs.
All right. Well, now's the time for public hearing on this. If you have comments you'd like to make regarding the item, please come to the podium. You'll have 5 minutes to address council on it. All right. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We need to take these one at a time. So is there a motion and a second to adopt Resolution A?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on A? All right, seeing none, we've got a motion and a second. Clerk, call the roll.
Tornquist,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Solberg.
Yes.
Marsters.
Yes.
Hickey.
Yes. Thank you, council. Is there a motion and a second to adopt B, which is, I'll read it here just to make sure. Resolution directing the advertising for sale of $1.4 million GO bond series 2011A and approving electronic bidding procedures. Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on this? All right, seeing no discussion, we have a motion and a second. Clerk, call the roll.
Marsters.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Solberg.
Yes.
Hickey.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Tornquist.
Yes.
All right. C, resolution instituting proceedings to take additional action for the issuance not to exceed $2.99 million GO refunding bonds. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion, council? Mr. Tornquist.
Yeah, I just wanted to pause for a moment and thank our finance director and the staff on this one. This particular one, we're issuing nearly $3 million in debt, but all of it is to repay existing debt and then to reissue at a better interest rate. And that's where the bulk of the $68,000 in savings from interest is coming from. And that's just good management, good financial management. It's well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tornquist. Anybody else on this? All right, we got a motion and a second. Clerk call the roll.
Tornquist,
Yes.
Marsters.
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Hickey,
Yes.
Solberg,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
All right, thank you, council. D, resolution directing the advertisement for sale of $2.96 million general obligation refunding bonds, series 2011B, and approving electronic bidding procedures. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this? All right, seeing none, got a motion and a second. Clerk call the roll.
Tornquist,
Yes.
Solberg,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Marsters.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Hickey.
Yes.
All right, thank you, council. Number 22, administrator recommending approval ordinance amending the city code by repealing Title 9, Chapter 4, speed regulations, Section 1, speed restrictions, adopting new Section 1 in lieu thereof, increase the speed from 25 to 30 miles per hour at 15th Street Southwest from Federal Avenue to Monroe Avenue on Vinyl. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Solberg? Mr. Marsters?
No, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, we've got a motion and a second on the ordinance. Clerk call roll.
Solberg,
Yes.
Marsters.
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Tornquist.
Yes.
Hickey.
Yes.
All right, thank you, council. Number 23, administrator recommending approval of ordinance adopting new ward precinct map based on 2010 census and certifying to the Secretary of State and County Auditor. And this is going to be on First. And Mr. Trott, I believe you wanted to open this up there real quick.
Yes, I'd like to make a couple comments. When staff went through this, they looked at the census data and compared all of the plats and determined that based off of the requirements that the state establishes, we could in turn leave the districts the way they were. And most people like to vote in the same place they've been used to voting, be represented in the same ward that they've been used to being represented in. And so we saw that as an opportunity in order to be able to leave them the same. It meets the requirements according to the test that the state has, and so that's what our recommendation is.
Thank you, Mr. Trott. Do we have a motion on first reading?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Marsters?
No comment.
Mr. Nelson?
No comment.
Anybody else? All right, seeing none, this is on first reading of the new ordinance on ward precinct map, and clerk call roll.
Marsters.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Hickey.
Yes.
Solberg,
Yes.
Tornquist.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
All right, thank you, council. Number 24, administrator recommending approval resolution approving a subrecipient agreement with Main Street Mason City for project management of the CDBG Downtown Revitalization Fund grant project and a $150,000 loan fund, revolving loan fund, including the lending terms and administration for that program. Is there a motion, a second to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Tornquist?
I think it's a great program.
Perfect. Ms. Solberg?
I am kind of excited to see this come in and be, along with the streetscape, this should make our downtown sparkle. Thank you.
How about Mr. Weaver?
Refresh my memory, is this the program where we also, I think I urged the involvement of local vendors?
Yes, it is.
And they came up with how much money?
$5 million.
Yeah, I think the public needs to know that too. Have they determined an interest rate on something like that, or is?
Ms. Meyer, do you know if they've gotten that far?
I think they have, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's tied to like one of the Fed rates.
Well, I just want to say thank you to those lenders for stepping up. And I appreciate that they even have a remote ear to what I had to say, but I want to thank them publicly for $5 million. And how many lending institutions are involved?
Those are our 5 local community banks.
5 local community banks. So that's good news. I want to thank them publicly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Anybody else? Mr. Marsters?
Well, I've been opposed to this all along from the beginning, not because I don't want to maintain property or downtown, but again, it never seems to end, and it's time to quit spending money. Look at what's going on in the state. and so on with finances, we need to tighten our belts as well. So I'm only voting it down, not because it's a bad program, but it's time for us to tighten the belts. We keep having tax increases every year. And I'm just trying to end the spending. We just need to cool it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Anybody else? Mr. Nelson.
Tonight, reluctantly, I will be approving the $150,000. I must repeat, reluctantly, for the renovations. When is enough enough? I've stated this on numerous occasions. In downtown, and again, I've repeated this figure for the citizens, over $21 million in the past 11 years has been spent in our downtown. 21 billion plus. That doesn't count private investment, Music Man Square, the Park Inn, the hotel. So, the citizens of this community have put forth a lot of money for our downtown. And I really do question what 14 storefronts, or maybe 15 by now, or whoever applies in a certain period, whether that's going to create any business activity. I've always led to believe is what's inside, not how it looks on the outside. So I do question it, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm not right. I want to see success in our downtown. I want to see success for Mason City, or we'd be set otherwise. So I hope I'm wrong. I just question the payback on this financial investment. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Anybody else? Mr. Hickey.
I just want to say thank you to the banks that stepped up also and put forth the effort to help make this hopefully a success for the future. So thank you to the 5 local banks that stepped forward and put the effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey. Anybody else? Mr. Congress.
Yeah, just for the benefit of the community, I want to highlight that unless one of these businesses downtown defaults on the loan that's from the revolving loan fund, there is no cost to the taxpayers. What we're doing is setting aside $150,000 in a revolving loan fund. The key word is loan. And what we've done by setting aside that $150,000 for a revolving loan fund is create an opportunity for us to get $500,000 from the state, which in turn has leveraged the ability for up to $5 million from local lending institutions. So by setting up a $150,000 loan fund, we've leveraged $5.5 million, none of which of the $5.5 million is taxpayer money. And if everybody repays their loans, there's no cost to taxpayers. It's a great opportunity for us.
You might want to include the 10% match to get the commercial loans.
Yeah, people got to have skin in the game. They have to have at least a 10% match on what they borrow. So people will have skin in the game.
Just
thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Nelson.
Is the $500,000 from the state taxpayers' money? We don't sell hot dogs and pop. We get money from the state, it's taxpayers' money. So you're right, it depends on who participates, and it's still taxpayer dollar, I don't care what color you paint it. Thank you.
Director Meyer, you had a comment on?
Yeah, the $500,000 is not state, particularly state of Iowa taxes, but it's community development block grant, it's federal. So it's federal money. The entire United States is paying taxes.
Still taxpayers.
Mr. Marshall.
Plus, we're setting aside $150,000 that we can't use, so that's taxpayers' money as well. Anyways, question. Does this facade improvement also qualify for the new urban revitalization tax abatement as well?
The new program is residential only. So, I mean, if they were doing upper story residential and it meant that 75% of the building, but none of the buildings that have signed up for the $500,000 grant are, for the most part, residential properties. I mean, they might have a unit or two in them, but...
Thank you.
That's a good question. Anybody else? All right. Well, seeing none, we've got a motion and a second. Thank you for the discussion, council. Clerk, call the roll.
Tornquist,
Absolutely.
Silver,
Yes.
Nelson,
Reluctantly, yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Hickey,
Yes.
Marsters.
No.
Thank you, council. It was a good meeting. We'll have a listening post here in 5 minutes. Thank you, folks. Stay cool out there.